Good evening, everyone, and welcome to Out of Nowhere. Well, my special guest today is Inspector Roy Teague. He served 6 years in the British Army, completing operations tours in both Northern Ireland and Bosnia before embarking on a distinguished police career spanning more than 26 years across two police forces. Can we please welcome Roy to the show? Hello there.
Hello, Bob. Great to be here. Great to be on your show.
Oh, thank you for coming on the show. What inspired you to compile Close Encounters of a Police Kind?
I've always had a passion for the bizarre and the unexplained, Bob. Ever since I've been a kid, things that go bump in the night, paranormal, UFO type stories, always from a young age. But it wasn't until 2016, mate, when I came home from a late shift and I stumbled across a documentary called UFOs and Nukes by Robert Hastings, where UAPs, as the trendy term is now, were seen above American missile bases. It rendered the nuclear missiles there, the ICBMs, the intercontinental ballistic missiles within that base inoperative, which is a huge thing. I did some research, then found out that it happened all over the world, including Russia and China. And I thought, well, why would the service men and women make that up? I don't think they would. And I started to think, well, who make good witnesses for UAP accounts? And by virtue of the training, surely the police must be right up there. So I started to do some of my own research and digging, and started to collate and interview police officers who'd had UFO sightings. I ended up interviewing over a period of about 4 years in excess of 250 police officers. And what I then did was I took the best 75 of those accounts and put them into a book, which obviously is called Close Encounters of the Police Kind. And I called it that because obviously it's a play on the very famous film Close Encounters of the Third Kind. I wanted people to know what the book was about before they saw a cover of it and it was obvious. And I think I achieved that. But I've always had a passion for it, Bob. And for me, it's an honor to be a conduit for fellow officers to get their stories out there. So
when you talk about that, were you surprised by the numbers of officers who came forward?
Yeah, I was. And out of the 250, only about 10 or so elected to go anonymous, and I'll always honor that for them. But I was surprised with the number. I did an appeal via social media platforms, the BBC, various radio outlets, the Police Federation of England and Wales, and it went nationwide. And I did it several times over, the 4 years. So when I got 250 replies via email over that 4 year period, I was absolutely astonished. But what that said to me, Bob, is that these things, whatever they are up in the sky, these aren't being seen by, Mike, the plumber, or Fred, the repair mechanic, just those people. That they're seen by trained observers. And I want the world to know. My goal by getting this book out there is that I want people to know it isn't happening to just people in what you would, normal jobs. Not that their jobs are any less important than, being in the police. But what I'm trying to say is that trained observers are seeing these things as well, not just people in everyday sort of walks of life. And I wanted to bring that to the fore and get that out to the public eye. I don't think the topic has had the respect that it deserves due to the stigma that comes with it. So my goal is to get these sightings out there so people know that police officers too are seeing these extraordinary things up in the skies above the United Kingdom and around the rest of the world, that this is a real phenomena and it's really happening.
Oh God, yeah. Did any of the stories include corroborating witnesses, physical evidence, or official reports?
I mean, a lot of them included official reports, not so much in the last 15 or 20 years, but before that, back in the day, police stations used to have a daily occurrence book, and there was a policy of reporting UFOs sightings to the RAF. That doesn't seem to happen anymore.
No.
In regards to corroborating evidence, yeah, I've got a couple of cases where there's been, officers have corroborated each other. I've got a helicopter UAP incident that occurred over London in 1997, and that was an officer on board, and that was corroborated by an army officer that was on board the helicopter with him. So I've got several cases where there were more than one officer present, and the account was corroborated. Some of the accounts were caught on CCTV. There's a couple of photographs taken. So, but never definitive proof. But then again, no one's got that yet. Even the recent videos released by the Pentagon and the Department of Defense, from across the pond over in the States, great footage of the Tic Tac and some USOs and some transmedium craft coming in and out of the oceans. But even though they're fantastic, it's not definitive proof. So I don't feel too bad that I haven't got that when the experts haven't got it. In fact, I'm going to rephrase that. They have got it, in my opinion. They're just not releasing it. Correct. So I'm more than satisfied that the United States in particular have got evidence. I think they've got craft, and I think they've got the occupants of some of those craft. That's my personal opinion. But the likes of you and I will never be privy to that information, I don't think.
No, I don't think so. What are some of the most compelling UAP encounters that featured in the book?
I mean, you can take your pick, but let's start with a spicy one if you want me to. I'll start with a potential abduction, on duty of a police officer. So, of course, there's the very famous 1980 case of Alan Godfrey, and I never thought I'd get anything like that. But I spoke to one officer. He contacted me. He's elected to remain anonymous, so I've given him the pseudonym of Officer F. Okay, so he's called Officer F because before him, I've got several officers that have gone anonymous, and they're in chronological order: Officer A, B, C, D, and eventually I landed on Officer F. Now, he was with another officer, and it was 1989, and he was a member of, it was either Grampian Police or Police Scotland. I'm not sure if the amalgamation had occurred yet, but that's by the by. So he stood outside the police station at Arboyne. It's about 1 a.m, and as they're about to leave the driveway of the police station, which is on Charleston Avenue, a call comes over the radio, and it says, we've had numerous reports of something in the sky coming from the east, from the direction of Aberdeen. Can you look out your car? Can you tell us if you can see anything? So they look in the sky. They don't see anything, but what they do see coming towards them is a rolling power cut where they can see all the street lights going out, and the lights that are in the houses at that time. Bear in mind, it's early hours of the morning, most are asleep, but the lights that are on are going out, and this rolling power cut is coming towards them. Eventually the lamppost right next to the police car goes out, then the police car goes dead, and it's at that point they both look up, and gliding over their head at about 10-15 mile an hour, according to Officer F, is this matte black perfect triangle, and it flies off, and as it goes off, it's swallowed up in the blackness of the sky, because obviously the sky is the same color as the triangle. They could see it flying above them because it was blocking out the stars. So they could, and he said he could see this metallic craft. So as it goes off and it's lost in the darkness, they knew where it was because the lights on the lampposts and the houses were going off as whatever it was headed off towards the town of Balatar in the west. And eventually the lights have come back on in the east, and then their cars turn back on, the lights on the dashboard. Now he jumps straight back into his car, grabs the mic and says, "That thing, I don't know what it is, it's just passed over our heads." And the operator says to him, "Well, where have you been? We've been trying to get hold of you for over 30 minutes. Now, he said to me, he wanted to stress this. He doesn't remember being taken or any missing time or being abducted or any of that.
Right.
So he thinks, well, maybe one of the hypotheses is that time moves slower or faster around these things. We don't know. But since then, he's had a load of headaches, to the extent where last year he went to hospital and he's had an MRI. He then had to speak to a consultant, and the consultant has detected behind his right eye some sort of metallic oblong tiny object. So instantly, because we're on the show, we know what we're both saying, a possible sort of implant, and that's what the officer is saying. Now, he was always under the impression, because there's a little scar by his right eye, that was caused by a lump of coal striking him in the face when he was a kid. His sister and he were having a coal fight and throwing lumps of coal at each other, as you do when you're kids. And
Yeah.
one of the lumps of coal struck him at the side of the eye, and he always assumed that that's what the scar was from. And he thought, well, whatever's behind my eye must be a bit of the coal. So he spoke to his sister and said, "You're never going to believe this. It's the possibility that maybe some of that coal is behind my eye." And she said, "Well, what do you mean a coal fight? We've never had a coal fight." And he said, "Well, we've spoken about it loads of times over the years. It's been a point of joking and laughing about it. Oh, do you remember when you threw that coal at me?" And she said, "I've no idea what you're talking about." So what the officer also believes is that the memory of the coal fight and the subsequent memories of the conversations of the coal fight have been implanted in his head. Now, because he's thought about this so much, sometimes when you think about memories, they unlock other memories that unlock other memories. And he remembers as a kid, and even up until last year, on several occasions, waking up in sort of like a dreamlike state where he can't move. And he states he's surrounded by really small people, but he just can't see their faces. So he's not saying they're small greys or they're aliens. He's just
No.
saying he has these hazy dreams. However, the aggregation of marginal gains comes in here now. So if you bear in mind, you take into consideration what he saw at night, take into consideration this object behind his right eye, the false memories, thinking about these small creatures or beings around his bed. You put that all together, and I think there's a good case for looking at this more from the point of view of a potential abduction case. So,
Oh, yeah.
you know, and I applaud the officer for coming forward. It took a lot of courage. I understand and I respect why he's elected to go anonymous. And bear in mind, that was a 30-year veteran of the police, not long retired.
My God, you know,
Really interesting case.
yeah, very interesting case. Were there reports involving radar, multiple officers, or other supporting evidence?
Yeah, so I can give you a good one for that. So in 1993, Police Constable Matt Hope wasn't in the police yet, but what he was an RAF radar technician, and he was stationed at RAF Benbecula. And for anyone that doesn't know, that is, I think it's the Outer Hebrides, either the Inner or the Outer Hebrides. I can't quite recall, but it's a very important radar station because it is an early warning radar station if we, the UK, are attacked by Russian nukes. That's an important, so we get the warnings. Now,
Yeah.
there had to be, as well as the radar operators, they had to be a radar technician on duty at the time in case there was a problem with the radar, and he and another were on duty. So, and you have to be next door to where the radar machines are, just in case you have to get in there quick. So somebody runs in and said, "Matt, you need to get in here quick," or M and Hope, whatever he was called then. So he runs into the room and they say, "Tell us, is there anything wrong with this radar?" And it's the old types of radar where you've got a circular screen, it's green, and a white line spins around the radar. And when it hits something in the sky, it recognizes that, it puts a blip on the screen.
Yeah.
Then it goes around again, it takes 10 seconds. And then where it is again in the sky, it blips again. But the old blip's slightly less white. So you can see the trail as whatever object it is moving across the screen. Now, he asked, "Well, why do you think it's a fault?" And they said, "Keep watching." And this thing was moving far faster than any man-made or known aircraft. Now, it traversed the entire radar, which covered 640 miles, right? And it did that in between 70 to 80 seconds. But let's say 80 seconds, the longest.
Yeah.
And what that means, with a little bit of maths, is that object was traveling at 28,800 miles an hour. Now, he checked the radar, as did the other guy, and there was nothing wrong with it. And they were all told the next day, "You're not to talk about it. It didn't happen. Forget about it." Now, what I can tell you, Bob, is that occurred in 1993. That's 28,800 miles an hour. We know it was doing that because they've got the evidence from this radar system. Today, we're in 2026. The fastest object that mankind has built thus far is the HGV, that's hypersonic glide vehicle, and unfortunately it's a Russian nuclear missile. Now that travels, I think it's Mach 27, which is about 22,000 miles an hour. So in 2026, that's the fastest we can do. This was in 1993 and was traveling at 28,800 miles an hour. So if the incident is as described by PC Hope, former PC Hope, and I've spoken to him numerous times, very nice guy, very down to earth, nothing to gain and everything to lose, and all the ridicule that comes with this. I believe him, and if the incident is as told, I think that's a good indication. Although it wasn't seen with the naked eye, that's good, solid evidence that there is something out there in the skies that we, mankind, are not responsible for building.
Oh, yeah, true. Absolutely spot on there. Yeah. When you're thinking about things like that moving at that speed so long ago, it's got to be, hasn't it?
Yeah, I would suggest so. On the balance of probabilities and beyond all reasonable doubt for me.
Did any officers believe they had witnessed technology beyond conventional aircraft?
Lots of them. In particular, several officers who saw craft do crazy things, or craft that was so large they had no business being in the sky, hovering 50 meters above them, huge saucer shaped craft. But I can tell you about a helicopter incident above London, if you like, and that was pretty crazy. So July the 5th 1997, Bob, PC Paul Hammond was on a helicopter above London. We know the date because there was a parade and there were thousands of people in the street, and the helicopter was there just to spot any sporadic breakouts of disorder, and then they would call in the ground troops. And while they were above the MI6 building in that area near the South Bank, the helicopters veered over to the right, and that's when Paul Hammond, and on board the helicopter also was a David Frampton, and he was a warrant officer, first class, on attachment from the army. And I've spoken to both. They've both given me the same statement, having not spoken to each other for 20 odd years. And what happened was this: as the helicopters banked over, they've seen a craft in the sky. They describe it as like a paper dart, one you might make at school. And they got onto Heathrow Airport because that's a restricted no-flight area because of the security. You're near Parliament, the MI6 building, Buckingham Palace, Downing Street, to name but a few. So they get onto Heathrow and say, what have you got up here? And Heathrow say, there's nothing on radar. There's nothing there. You're on your own. Well, they know that is not the case because they can absolutely see it. So they start circling this in the helicopter, looking at it from the front. They're circling it like a predator would its prey, or someone in a Mexican standoff. And eventually they stop and they start looking at this thing through the FLIR camera, which is forward looking infrared. And as they're looking at it, the craft that they're looking at, the object, it heats up at the back. Part of it raises up at a right angle. And then this is the crazy bit. According to Paul Hammond, who'd been on the air support unit for 18 years at the time, and according to warrant officer first class David Frampton, the object shot forward and a sort of mini hole tear opened in the sky. This object flew into it at ridiculous speed, and then the sky closed or zipped up behind it. So that to me is, if the sighting is as per the officers have said, that's a good example of potential, interdimensional craft. Often we think about craft traversing the great distances of time and space, don't we? How do they get here? It's hundreds of thousands of light years away. I mean, the nearest star system, the nearest sun to our sun, Proxima Centauri, is 4.25 light years away. That's 186,000 miles a second, or 671 million miles an hour. It would take 4.25 light years to get there, but we can't travel at the speed of light. We would have to go at conventional speeds, which would take about 6,300. So we often think, well, how do they traverse the great distances of time and space? But I also think they can do that, and they do, with wormhole technology and all the rest of it. But I also think there's a lot to be said for interdimensional travel, where they can open portholes and come through and all the rest of it. So there's two modes of how they get here. These are just my theories and just my hypothesis. No evidence to back it up, but I believe this based on the evidence and the research that I've done and all the officers that I've spoken to and all of the witnesses.
There's a Lawson here has got something for you. Right, are you aware of a UFO spotted over central Birmingham? Was spotted by WM police in June. Heard about this on BBC, but the police refused to comment further.
I haven't, but I will certainly investigate. That's really, really interesting. I mean, if I I mean, maybe there's a
Lawson
link
is.
on it. Yeah, maybe there's a link on it, or I could
Yeah.
dig a bit
I
further and
get
find out a bit
Lawson to
more
get in
detail.
touch with you.
Yeah, so if anybody wants to email me anything, I've had to create a new email address, Bob, because my personal one's been clogged up since the release of this book. It's just I've got my personal emails, UFO emails, and they're all messed up. So I have created another email address, and that is for anyone who wants to email me about UFOs or paranormal stuff. It is contact@policingtheunexplained.com. So contact@policingtheunexplained.com. And if anyone's got anything of a UFO or UAP nature, or they just want to talk about something or ask my opinion or tell me they've seen something, I guarantee a reply for every single email. And while I'm mentioning that, if I could just mention as well, Rob, I've created a YouTube channel because I want to start interviewing some of these officers.
Yeah.
And that's been up and running about 2 weeks. There's one video on there at the moment. It's just of a radio interview I've done. I've put some slides over it. But that, again, if you go on YouTube, and that's Policing the Unexplained, if anybody, it could be good enough to jump on there, look at the video, like it, and then subscribe to the channel, I'd be absolutely, that would chuff. That would really help me out.
Oh, yeah, of course it would, yeah. So you have to find out about that, Roy.
Oh, we'll dig into it for sure. I get that many cases that there's so many of them that sometimes one or two can slip you by, but I haven't heard of that. I don't know if it was in the
there's
the paper or the internet or
don't know.
social media.
He said sure. This was on the BBC, but it doesn't say when. If you, I know Lawson's in the chat room there. If you know the year, Lawson, let us know.
Yeah, I mean, I know of incidents where the police have gone to UFOs that have been seen, ironically in Birmingham. But there's one in 2010 where there'd been a fight in the street between two families, and people had been arrested and carted off. And there were only 2 officers left at the scene, and they were trying to quell the disorder and prevent it breaking out again. And it was clearly going to go. These people didn't like each other. And just at the point they started grappling with each other, someone's pointed and said, "What the hell is that?" for want of better words. And they've all looked up in the sky, and there was he's described as a J-shaped UFO, metallic in structure, but he said it was only about 2 meters in length, but a J-shaped UFO. And I said, "Well, how do you know it wasn't a balloon or a drone?" And he said, "No, it was a metallic structure. It definitely wasn't a drone. There were no signs of propulsion like you would see on a drone, because you could see the whole thing. And it definitely wasn't balloons, because this thing was on a flight path, flying really slow against the flow of the wind. No signs of propulsion whatsoever. And because it flew off towards Birmingham Airport, they've had to send officers on blues and twos because there's a concern that it's heading towards an international airport." They never saw it again, never caught up with it. But that UFO was so profound for all the people there and the officers, it prevented what in essence was a massive punch up. And I call it the Only Fools and Horses UFO because it's akin to the scene in Only Fools and Horses when there's a big riot and Del Boy and Rodney turn up in the Reliant Robin and pap the horn, and the police knew about the one. But yeah, so I call it the Only Fools and Horses UFO. But they're all really intriguing cases. I could talk to you from now until the end of time about some of those cases.
There's another one here from Stephen Collin. "My uncle was a village copper in a small village near Whitby in the early 70s. He witnessed a strange object that defied all flying logic till the day he passed, and he said it was nothing from here."
Oh, that's a shame. I'm sorry to hear that, his uncle's no longer with us, and it's a shame. I'd love to have spoken to your uncle Stefan. That sounds intriguing. That really does. I mean, if you want to email me, Stefan, and tell me a bit more about it, I'd love to hear about it.
Yeah, he's always on this. He's always on my channel anyway, so he will get in touch with you because he's a great guy. So, when you talk about the paranormal, what kinds of paranormal events did officers most commonly report?
I mean, I've only sort of started collating those in the last 3 or 4 months. I opened the criteria, you see. So I went from UFOs to the paranormal encryptids, and I went from not only police officers but emergency services like fire and the NHS, the National Health Service, the Coast Guard and the military. But I've had some interesting tales from them. I can tell you one about an officer, and I come at you with what I bring to the party here, all the names of the officers. So I've heard this story a few times, but I've never heard, oh, it's from Fred Bloggs or John Smith. So I've always assumed it's a wives' tale. But what I've got is a Sergeant Michael Davies. It was the late 60s, and he was the force lead for fatal road collisions. And there was a collision outside of Birmingham Airport, Elmsden Airport, it was called back in the day.
Yeah.
And he's turned up to that collision, and one car has gone into the back of another. It's your standard road traffic collision.
Oh, yeah.
And on the pavement, there's a lady sat there holding a tissue to her head with a load of blood coming out of it. So he opens the first aid box in his car, runs over to her, hands her a lint bandage because it's better. She puts it to her head. He runs to the back car. He assists the man and the woman out, who were husband and wife. People quite badly injured, mate, because back in the day, there were no seatbelts or airbags. So he gets them out. Then he runs to the first car and he helps the man out of the car. And the man says, "Get my wife." So he runs around to the passenger side, opens the door, and she's kind of fallen down into the footwell. And there's a huge spider web on the windscreen. And as he moves her back, there's a huge cut, massive cut on her head, because her head's obviously struck the windscreen.
Yeah.
And it's at that point he realizes she's wearing the exact same clothes as the lady on the pavement behind him, and she's got a wound in the same place the lady on the pavement had behind him. And he said to me, and she was obviously deceased, and he said to me, before I even turned around, I knew the lady on the pavement wasn't going to be there. And he turned around and she wasn't, and the bandage is just on the floor. So that's Sergeant Michael Davis, a really nice guy, lives in Coventry now. And the funny thing was, when I went to see him, he had got some old memoirs of hundreds of memories from his service in the army and the police. And that was in there. I've got it in my drawer. So it wasn't just something he's made up on the spur of the moment.
No.
Oh, well, he's collating these, I'll just tell him this. And this paperwork was probably 40 years old with coffee stains on it and typed on a typewriter. And in the stories in there. And he said he felt like a weight off his chest being able to tell his story, because he's never told it before. And that's one of quite a few. So I've branched out from, I still, my favourite will always be, UFOs and UAPs, yeah, the trendy terms there. But the paranormal ones are brilliant, and I've had quite a few of those, mate.
What about maybe several accounts mention missing time? What patterns that emerged from that then?
I wouldn't say. I mean, of all the officers I've spoken to, I've only spoken to 2 out of the 250 that state that they believe they've experienced missing time. As for patterns, I mean, if you look at any missing time case, they're either aware of it at the time, they know something's happened, or when they regressed later on, they think, well, I only saw a light in the sky, but it was clearly more, because the regression opens up memories. But patterns, I'd say it's usually the same pattern, that even when they remember, it's like a hazy memory. So when they're giving it back, they're saying they remember little bits and bobs, then they'll be blank for 2 minutes, then they'll be from a table to somewhere else, then they never completely remember it. I would suggest, unless they regressed several times, they might remember a bit each time. You remember I said before, if you think about a memory, that unlocks another memory, that unlocks another, and you might have to be regressed several times to remember, if you're involved in some sort of abduction case. But for patterns, it's very hard to quantify or answer that question.
Right, yeah. Where have we got to here? Oh, did any officer fear ridicule or damage to their careers?
Yeah, all of them, really. So, I mean, there's some good examples of why they would feel that way. So, for example, I know Alan Godfrey. He went on TVAM and he's on live TV in a tunic, and he spoke about his abduction on duty in uniform from Todmorden in 1980. And I read his book, met him, really nice guy. And he states, because of the ridicule and the stigma, he felt he had to leave, and he felt he was almost drummed out of the service. I know Gary Heseltine, brilliant, fantastic ex-police officer, detective. He had some problems as well when he came out of the UFO closet. I was also conscious that it happens all over the world. There's in 2011, there was an El Paso deputy sheriff called Chuck Zukowski. and he was a UFO, UAP, paranormal type investigator. He had his own sort of
Yeah.
web page, and
Met him a few times.
did you?
Well, I've interviewed him 5 times now.
Well, as you know, there was a series of cattle mutilations where
Yes.
he worked, and his force attributed them to predators. And he said no, he thought it had a UFO connotation, and he said as much on his website. And 2 days later, he was relieved of his badge gun, his ID, and he was fired just for challenging and giving a different opinion about that and saying it was a UFO connotation. And just for giving that different opinion and coming out the UFO closet, he was gone. So I had that at the back of my mind. When I started investigating this, the only thing I've had is I've had banter from other officers, good buddies of mine, but banter's good for the soul. I love a good banter.
Yeah,
but
of course.
I do feel, sadly, in my opinion, that because of my interest in UFOs and the paranormal, some in my own organisation, we've closed minds, don't take me as seriously as they once did. And I think that's a real shame myself, because it's a fantastic subject. And as I always say to everybody, before they start the ridicule and the stigma, I'll always say, well, 95% of the population of this planet believe in a god or a supreme deity of some kind. And you've got no evidence of that, save a book. And that's not me knocking religion. I've got my own beliefs. I have.
Yeah.
But what I am saying is that I would never ridicule you, and you believe in something where there's no evidence whatsoever apart from a book written 2,000 years ago. But I'm coming at you with photographs, CCTV, forensic evidence, corroborating evidence, brilliant footage released from the Pentagon, as I alluded to before. So I've got all this evidence and I'm ridiculed. But then you say you believe in a supreme being with no evidence, but there's no ridicule with that. And I wouldn't want anyone to be ridiculed for the beliefs, because, like I say, I've got mine. But I'm just saying there's a bit of hypocrisy there.
Oh, yeah.
If you understand where my point is and where I'm coming from.
Oh, God, yeah. I know Steph just wants to put this in. I witnessed 2 metallic objects above my house a week last Monday. It was 6:15 in the evening. One looked lozenge shaped, the other was round. I thought they were balloons, but they were moving against the wind.
That's interesting. I mean, it's the moving against the wind thing that interests me, because it alludes to the fact that there is some sort of power, because there must be, to push against the wind. I suppose then, to investigate that, I might have to contact some sort of weather meteorological department and say, well, what was the wind like on that day? Because I can tell you for a fact. So I skydive, mate, right? I like to skydive. And I can tell you that, I can tell you that the wind at 100 meters can go in a different direction to the wind at 300 meters or whatever. So it's very difficult sometimes. And I go back to my 2010 sighting of the J-shaped UFO. He said it was so low that wouldn't have been the case, because they could clearly see it. But it depends how high the object was, because you can get wind going one way and then at the other, and you can get it swirling and all the rest of it. So it might appear to be against the wind, but it might not be. I'm not saying it isn't, but it might not be. And it's difficult to see. So sometimes I would say to people, well, wet the finger, stick it in the air, which way is the wind blowing? But then look at the clouds. So the clouds going, does it look like the clouds are going the other way? Because of the different air inversions. But I loving the profile picture of Steph there. Big dog lover, so I'm loving that. That's very nice.
Oh, yeah.
But lozenge shaped craft. I've had a few of those reported to me. I mean, I get crafts of all sorts reported to me. Lozenge shaped triangles, both equilateral, when it's the same size, or isosceles,
cigar-shaped objects.
Say again, sorry.
You get cigar-shaped objects.
Yeah, I've had a few cigar-shaped objects. I've had one that's been said to be the size of a 5-story hotel. I mean, I personally believe there are so many different UFO shapes and types that, much as we have different planes for different things, don't we? Like fighter jets for wars, and we have commercial jets to take people around the world, and crop dusting planes, and each plane is for a different thing and a different purpose. And I think that UAP craft, there are so many because they use them for different things, whether it's their probes, or they're conveying the occupants of those craft, or they're here just to take samples. I have no idea. And who's to say that the craft that are seen are not made and built by several different species that come from the outside of terra firma, we just don't know. But I think different craft are used for different things.
Do you believe government are becoming more transparent about unexplained area phenomena?
Yeah, I do, but only because of the pressure from the public and the fact that we've got technology now, so they can't hide it as much, and because of whistleblowers. And each country is different. Like in the UK, it's just the government aren't interested in talking about it. Where it's a lot different in the United States. But I think unless a spaceship of some kind lands on the White House lawn or outside 10 Downing Street, they'll never admit anything. But I think you can look at there's a ton of books on it now. Obviously, I'm guilty of that myself, but yeah, there's more evidence now. So I think, it's more widely available, and people, I think, are more comfortable talking about it. Whereas back in the day, it would be spoken about in quiet rooms and whispered about in corridors, and people are more inclined to tell their friends, I saw something in the sky the other day, and there'd be less, people wouldn't automatically jump to the conclusion that they were nuts.
Hey, when we talk about sightings, do you think some of us will see more and other people? You can look in the sky, there might be three of you, and you say, look at that up there. They go, where?
Yeah, so I think some people perhaps are more susceptible to it. There's a theory called the hitchhiker theory, where once you've seen one, they know, and I use the word they,
yes,
they upstairs know that you have seen them, or on occasions they choose to let you see them, and you'll see them multiple times. But as another great case from a helicopter near St Athens in 2006, where a police officer, Ian Stephen, was on a helicopter, and as they were coming into land at St Athan, he's pressed a button because he was the camera operator, and the gimbal of the camera's turned round, because when they land they have to protect the camera in case there's an accident. Very expensive piece of kit. And just as they're coming in, the pilot and he see a massive triangular craft above some hills called Cefn Mabli in South Wales, and he said the triangle was a mile in length from corner to corner to corner, and it was glistening green, like green flecks, like you'd look out the window at frost and see it was like sparkling. So but nobody else seemed to see it. No one else reported it. So why could they see it and nobody else? Had it allowed them to see it because they were up in the air? Or was it a case that no one else saw it because they were below and looking at the craft from a different angle, and it only had some sort of cloaking technology from below, whereas they were, elevated in a helicopter and could see it? But yeah, there's several stories and loads of research you can go online where people are saying, I can see it, it's over there. And other people are saying, I can't see anything. But that's when you start to get into the realms of CE5, don't you? Close encounters of the fifth kind. So, you've got the first kind, second kind, third kind, fourth, and the fifth is the telepathic type kind. And I've interviewed a few officers who've claimed that, but they're not in the book yet because I need to do some further research on those. It's a big thing to start putting that in.
If you had unlimited resources, what type of investigation would you like to conduct?
If I had unlimited resources?
Yes.
Oh, I'd say, well, in that case, can you post me to GCHQ in Cheltenham and give me complete authority over every British airbase? So every time someone comes in, I can on the radio, and I can get a jet up there. That's the only way you're going to get the evidence, is to get up there and trying to come into contact with these objects. But I know at my level, look, I'm a police inspector in West Midlands Police, so there's no jets on the car park at the police station or anything like that.
No.
So, and also I am confined in a way. I can only use the tools and the resources that yourself or other people can. So I can't use police systems to do my research, because you can only use those for policing purposes. I can only use things like that are available to anyone else, like Flight Radar or ABDS, which is a brilliant tool. I'll use apps to find out where Venus or Saturn or Jupiter was in the sky at the time we had a sighting, what the weather was like at the time. Were there any flights at the time I weren't aware of, meteor showers? All of these things. Was there a concert or a laser display? So I have to conduct all those inquiries with the tools that anybody else can get. I think it's just the fact that I've done it so often now, and that I've got a big tick off list of inquiries I can follow and routes I can do that. So you get very good at it. But if I had unlimited resources,
a lot of hard work.
Yeah, it is a lot of hard work. So I've got a thing called a methodology of investigation, mate. And I operate in the ABC principles: accept nothing, believe no one, and check everything. Right. So, I've got to also I've got a rule out list of about 50 or 60 things on there: birds, planets. Planets, the most misdiagnosed thing for UFOs, right? Venus and Saturn, drones, birds, light bouncing off water back up onto the clouds, Chinese lanterns, lasers. You've got to rule all these things out, and I've got about 50 or 60 of them. Now, if I can rule those out, maybe, just maybe, I'm onto something. But then I have to look at the second thing, which is secret military craft under testing. Now, as I said before, mate, we're a very intelligent species, and we can create craft that go at thousands of miles an hour. So if someone says to me, this thing was going at 5,000 miles an hour, I'll say, okay, but that doesn't prove it's non-human tech, because we can build things like that. So where you rule out military craft is if you can say the object did right angled crazy turns, or if it was from a hovering standing start or flying very slow, it went what we call bullet exit, thousands of miles an hour in a second, because we don't have the technology to do that yet. And if we do get to thousands of miles an hour, there's got to be a reaction from the craft we built first, like afterburners and all the rest of it. Now, if I can eliminate all the things on my rule out list, if I can eliminate military craft under testing, that's when I go to Sir Arthur Conan Doyle, who wrote Sherlock Holmes, his very famous saying. And he said, where you've eliminated the impossible, whatever remains, no matter how improbable, must be the truth. So if everything on my rule out list is impossible, if secret military craft being tested is impossible, no matter what remains, and no matter how improbable, craft of unknown, non-human tech must be the truth. But of all of the 250 cases, I've probably interviewed about, I'd say 8 or 9 where I'm absolutely convinced what they've seen is non-human tech. But and thank you for bearing with me to explain that, because I think it's important for people to understand how I investigate these things and come to, the conclusion I have. And of course, it's not infallible. You've got to consider so many things, mate, like Fata Morgana, which is like hot air meets cold air, and it gets like a mirage, like in a desert or out to sea. Sometimes you see it looks like a huge ocean liner is 100 feet off the air because of the air inversion. So you've got to consider that. You've also got to consider the peridelia effect, where shadows will go over something and make an object appear to look something different. Like, for example, when you're a kid and there's a coat on a stand in the corner of your room and a fishbowl, and the shadows combine make it look like there's a scary man in your room leaning over you and all that. So it makes it look like there's something there that isn't. So you've got to take so many things into consideration and rule out so many things before you finally get to the conclusion it's non-human tech. And it's very difficult and it's not easy. But what I will say is this: of all the hundreds of thousands of UFO sightings across the globe, I only need one of those to be proven to be non-human tech, and the case is made out and we've got there. Now, we haven't got there yet, but I hope one day that we will, mate.
Yeah. As working on the book change your own beliefs?
Well, I started off being, I'd say, on the fence, to quietly believing there was something, to now believing beyond all reasonable doubt, as we say in a court of law, that this phenomenon is absolutely 100% real. So I believe that craft does come to this planet, probably here already under the oceans, 70% of the planet's covered by oceans. We can't get there. They're hiding in plain sight. I believe that craft of extraterrestrial origin has visited and continues to visit this planet. And I know that loads of my colleagues will watch these podcasts where I'm saying these things, and they can say what they want, but my beliefs are based on, you know, the accumulation of best evidence from all of the investigations that I've done and the research that I've done online. I think most people, mate, well, there's three questions. I think most people will think, is there life elsewhere in the universe? Well, you could have a weed growing on Saturn or an amoeba on you know, Jupiter. Well, that's life, and it's extraterrestrial because it's not of Earth. And so yeah, there could be. And I think people will probably think, yeah, okay, I'll go with that. Then the next question is there intelligent life elsewhere in the universe? Well, it's, you know, there must be, well, there's trillions and trillions of not stars but galaxies. Are you telling me that we're the only ones? And I think most people accept there's probably life elsewhere out there. But where people, the sticking point is has that life traversed the great distances of those other star systems to get here? And I think that's where a lot of people go, no. But I believe that they are here and they have come here and they're still doing.
Oh, I think they've always been here. I do.
Yeah, probably.
Steph's just saying, I noticed an aeroplane going over objects. It was a passenger jet from Berlin to Manchester, cruising at 11,000 feet or something, I think. 1,000, yeah. I wonder if the pilot on board picked anything up on radar.
It would depend if, I mean, I've got a couple of really good buddies of mine now that help with my research to do with things like radar. So it would depend if that was another plane. If it's a UAP, it wouldn't be picked up by civilian radar on the basis there's no TCAS system that they say in there. That gives off a signal. So it's a way of aeroplanes talking to each other, you know, so if you're getting too close, they would know, and all the rest of it. So it's a transponder using a TCAS system. So the transponders are saying, hey, we're over here, to each other, and it tells the airport that. If it's a UAP, well, UAPs are, you know, they don't operate on our technology and they're not going to have a transponder. Only I would suggest from my research is the majority of these things, when they're picked up on radar, are usually picked up by military radar. It's just the way things work. A lot of civilian radar screens UAPs out because it thinks they're a blip. So if something goes across a civilian radar at, I don't know, 10,000 miles an hour, that radar won't pick it up because it'll think it's a mistake, whereas the military one won't. And that's just the way it is. So when officers go, can you get onto Heathrow or Gatwick or Birmingham Airport and tell me what this thing is? They will only be able to tell you what it is if it's got a transponder. Correct. So when we're saying there's nothing up there, you're on your own, that's when you know whatever it is doesn't have a transponder on board. Or if it is a plane, they've just turned it off. So I do know that a certain bunch of gentlemen in Hereford will turn theirs off when they do their maneuvers. So, and I know that from speaking to radar operators.
Right. Which single case has stayed with you the most and why?
I mean, there's lots, but there's a guy called PC Flanagan, and he had 3 experiences, and it's probably, well, they're all brilliant. I mean, the first one, he was parked in Oxford Street looking over the River Tyne. He was in Tynemouth Police at the time, and an object, you can see an object under the water, and it shot up from the water, creating no ripples. Huge big sphere the size of a car shot up into the heavens at thousands of miles an hour. That was his first one in the late 60s. He had an absolutely insane one, which I'll talk to you about, in 1973. And he is in a car with Sergeant Bob Walker, and they're driving along the A19 near a place called Seaton Burn. And it's a dual carriageway, and on the opposite side of the carriageway there's a grass bank, and over that bank they can see a load of red glowing light, and they think, oh, the cornfield's on fire. We'll get off at the next roundabout We'll go around and we'll investigate it. We might have to call the fire department. But as they're about to get off, the glow, it turns into a huge spherical ball, like an orb that comes over the bank, and then it flies onto the carriageway on the opposite side to where they are. And this is about 2 o'clock in the morning. And it follows them down the A19. And every time they slowed the car, it would slow. Every time they sped up, it would sped up. And according to David Flanagan, it was so hot, it was almost making the inside of the car unbearable. They were trying to use the police radio. It wouldn't work. And only when they came off at the A1, A19 junction overpass did they stop the car, because they'd lost sight of it. And as they've got out the car, they've heard a noise, and there's a copse of trees, and they've seen it above there. Then it shot towards the car. At the last minute, gone off at a right angle, and it shot off down the A1. And only when it's out of sight did the radios come to life. They jumped on the radio and said, "You're never going to believe what's happened to us." And I applaud them for doing it, because I don't know if I would have, because I don't know what the reception would have been from the dispatcher. And the inspector has said, "Get back here." And later on, the inspector said to him, "I thought you'd been drinking. That's why I wanted you to come back." Well, the joke was on the inspector on the basis that within about 20 minutes, lots of police forces going up north and into Police Scotland had reports of the same phenomena seen by other officers as well, corroborating what David Flanagan had said. The next morning, he was woken up by a phone call, and he was taken, he believes, to RAF Bulmer, where he was sat down by the RAF, and they asked him to give a full statement and a full report. And I thought that was a really, really good case. Really
Very
nice.
good case. What advice would you give to a police officer or anyone who experienced something they can't explain?
Email me. Email me and let's have a discussion about it, because it might be the case. I've had several email me who have described something, and I've then said, "I know what you think it is, but it isn't. I think it's this." So there was a couple of officers up north who had seen, it was like an oblong UFO in the sky, spinning around very slowly, and eventually it was turning like green, blue, red, and then it turned black again. And I identified what that was, and I sent them a picture and said, "Look at this. Now look at some footage of one of these up in the sky." And you can buy them off Amazon. They're like these little weather oblong solar balloon things. And the reason they're turning red and yellow is because as they're turning round, the glint of the sun is bouncing off them, and it looks like they were changing color, but it was just the color, the kaleidoscope of color bouncing off the black sort of material. But these things can be massive, but you can pick them up, and they can be like 40 foot long. They're like, because they're full of air. So if anyone's had a sighting, get hold of myself and let's talk about it. And on the email address I gave before, contact@policeintheunexplained.com. I'd love to hear from them.
Yeah. What do your readers take away from Close Encounters of the Police Kind?
What do they take away from it? They take away from it the fact that sworn constables, servants of the Crown, guardians of law and order, professional witnesses are seeing these things up in the skies too, as well as the general public. So what that does, it bolsters other accounts that come in from this country and around the world, because the trained police officers by nature of how they come for the police training to be very observant, they'll be noting straight away amount of time on observation, distance, the visibility, what there were any obstructions at the time, height, speed, all that type of stuff. So what they're going to get out of it is the fact that, sworn officers like they have seen these things around the planet, and they're not alone in what they have seen. And to take it more seriously, now law and order are coming out and saying, we have seen these things too.
Have you had your own experiences then?
I would love to say I have had a UAP experience, but the answer is, sadly, I haven't. And I'm really disappointed, but I haven't. I had a friend of mine come and bang on my door about 4 or 5 months ago, and he said, "Look, you're not going to believe this," because he knows I'm into this. So, and up in the sky were 4 red lights, and it looked like they were on a red square, and it was massive. and it was up in the sky, thousands of feet, and it went out of sight. I saw it for literally about 5-10 seconds, and I was almost guilty. I always say to officers, "Why didn't you film it or get it?" And they'll say, "Well, I was so in awe, I didn't get my." I said, so I'm there for 10 seconds going, and then I suddenly thought, my camera. So I ran back in and grabbed my phone, because these phones now have got better cameras on than cameras that you can buy from the shop. So I ran out and I got about 15 seconds of the footage, and then I jumped in my car. I tried to reacquire this thing, and I did about a mile down the road, and then it disappeared. Now, when I got back, I was so excited. I thought, this is it. I've seen something. I went on to ABDS. I went into flight radar. Nothing at all. I thought, brilliant. Now I watched the footage, and just one of those lights moved inwards a little bit. And it was then apparent it was 4 separate red lights. So it wasn't a huge, big square. I did some inquiries, and unfortunately, I discovered that it was 4 F-15 American jets on the way back to Lakenheath, who were, they're very naughty, the Americans, because they didn't turn on their transponders. So they weren't on any of those systems. But I did some inquiries, and I can confirm they were jets. And I thought, this is it. But it wasn't. But it's always the way, when you're looking for something, you never see it, do you? It's like trying to find a four-leaf clover in your back garden. You never find it. And then,
it's always the case is that you're so involved looking at it, and every time you've got your phone out, it's gone.
Yeah, I know. But I managed to get the footage of 4 jets that I thought was something, UAP-esque, and it wasn't. One day.
Are there plans for a follow-up book or further research?
I think I owe it to the other numerous emails that I've got from police witnesses, nurses, military. I think I owe it to them to do another book. So I'll probably do another Close Encounters of the Police kind, but I'll also probably do an emergency services one as well, where for paranormal stuff. So I've got tons and tons of stories that it just takes so long to write them up. You've then got to send them back to the person that's told you to say, is that correct? Yeah. Then you got to say, will you go on record? And I'd say 99% do. And the ones that don't want to, I'll try and persuade them, oh, come on, you're out the job now, or you're in the job. What's the worst they can do? And poke fun at you. But, I've had firearms officers or officers on some very sort of sneaky beaky squad say, I'm not going to say that I've seen this, because they'll take my guns off me, or I won't be on this squad anymore. And, I'll be posted to like Alaska.
Difficult, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. So, but I will, to answer your question, I will do another book, but that's a ways down the road.
Where can listeners find the book and keep you up with your work?
So, first of all, it was a big thank you from me to Mirror Books, who took me on. They took me on. They had faith in me. They did the book. You can buy the book pretty much everywhere. On Amazon, it's there now. Waterstones, it's everywhere. And if people want to get hold of me, it's the email address before, contact@policeandtheunexplained.com. But to really, really get hold of me, just check out the YouTube channel, Police and the Unexplained. So I've got about 200 subscribers in about a week and a half. So I'm really pleased about that. And my plan is to interview some of the officers who've been kind enough to speak to me. I've got the cameras, we've got the green screen, we're ready to go. So I'm just going to, I've interviewed one already, but I plan to get probably 3 of them, the interviews done, and release 3 in a batch. And then after that, 1 every month. That's my plans going forward. So yeah, the YouTube channel, Police and the Unexplained, is probably the best place to see my work. And then the email address, contact@Police and the Unexplained to get hold of me.
Oh, brilliant. After hearing more than 250 serving and retired police officers describe encounters with the unexplained, area phenomena, and the paranormal events, do you believe we are closer to understanding these mysteries, or do you think we have only just begun to scratch the surface?
I mean, there's 2 schools of thought here. There's do the government understand it more, and there's do the public understand it more. I think the government understand a lot more than we do, because I think they've got the craft, and I think they've got the bodies, but they're just not saying. They won't tell us, and as a consequence of not telling us everything, our understanding is this, when it should be the same as the government's that. But I think with the passage of time and the way disclosure is, I would hope, in the next 10 or 15 years, whether the government want to or not, I think because technology has advanced, they will have to maybe begrudgingly admit something. They'll probably come out with, well, we know there's life elsewhere because we can't explain this and this, because they have been saying these craft aren't ours, we can't explain this. I think they're slowly educating and bleeding it into us, I think, perhaps to get ready for that day when it's undeniable and undisputable.
Yeah, so, but we still don't do a lot in the UK, do we?
No, we don't, unfortunately. So, we don't do public press conferences like NASA did about 2.5-3 years ago. We don't put Senate hearings on the TV where whistleblowers are on there saying that they've spoken to people who've seen non-human entities, on tables from crash saucer craft. We don't get any of that. We're the Brits, aren't we? Stiff upper lip and a big zip in between both of them, and we don't say anything.
It's true that as well.
It's very true. Yeah, it is very true, and it's sad, really.
Well, it is. Yeah, we've just about come to end of the show. Thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been good as always.
It's been brilliant to speak to you, and I hope the viewers enjoy what I had to say.
I'm sure they would do. Everybody in the chat room has always said that. Yeah, excellent show. Brilliant evening with Roy and Bob. It's just amazing tonight. Yeah, so all the best for your YouTube channel. Everybody out there, go and subscribe to him.
I really appreciate it. And there's also tomorrow, mate, as well as the book out and a Kindle version, there's an audio version released tomorrow as well. So
brilliant.
That's worth throwing out there.
Yeah, of course it is.
I'm going in the right direction. It's all about disclosing and getting the truth out there, isn't it?
Of course it is. Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Get it out there more. Yeah, so thank you, Roy, for coming on the show. My guest on Friday is Dennis W. Carroll. He's a national and international known writer, author of the occult and folklore. It's this Friday, the 31st of July at 7 p.m. in the UK. He'll be a great guest as well. His first time he's been on my show. Like you as well, your first time on my show. And I've been doing radio since 2014. I enjoy doing it as well. You ought to do it yourself in the future.
I might consider it. There's some. I've got some ideas coming, buddy. I've got some ideas.
Oh, that'd be brilliant. That'd be absolutely brilliant. Thank you again. Thank you to everybody in the chat room for some of the questions as well. I think there's quite a few people in the chat room said they will get in touch with you.
Well, I can't wait to read those emails. I mean that as well. If somebody can take the time to email me, I guarantee a reply back.
Oh, brilliant, brilliant. So thank you again. Enjoy
welcome,
the rest of your day, everybody, wherever you are around the world. Good night from the UK.